Hey everybody, Carson here with another one-man review. Today I'm looking at Feelings, A Story in Seasons by Manjit Thapp. I think that's how to pronounce the name. I don't know. I can barely speak English. You'll have to excuse me. This is a book I probably never would have picked up. We were in, I think it was in the Strand bookstore in New York, looking around, and Tori grabbed this. Wherever we're at, my partner Tori grabbed this because it spoke to her. I probably would have looked at it and thought, I don't know, feelings. I don't want to. It's not anything I'd heard of before. It looks, yeah, very. I mean, it is. It's a very emotional book in a way that something that I'm not typically interested in. I'm not someone terribly in touch with my feelings, and I see stuff like that. I don't know. I just get disinterested. But flipping through she showed it to me. Said, hey, look at this. This book's really cool. And yeah, it's just a gorgeous book. So I immediately okay, I gotta read this. Never heard of this artist before. It's published by Random House New York, so not something that I've come across in the standard, here's the comics you should be reading type of stuff I look at. It's a story told in seasons, and she makes a note at the beginning here that the book's structure is inspired by the 6-season calendar used by some countries in South Asia, which includes a month-season and, depending on the region, splits either autumn or winter into two. So that's interesting. Usually we'd split things into 4. And this book is very self-aware of the idea of boxing things in and subdividing things and putting things into categories like that. I think the artist seems to really live her life on a grid, and that's one of the things I really love about the art in the book. So each chapter is one summer, and she'll cue it with a color that she associates with it. It seems pretty autobiographical, and it is very much in the genre that is one of my least favorite genres. Even though there's a lot of good books like this one in the genre, I don't like autobiographical work about comic artists or comics about artists struggling to make art. It's just, I don't know. I don't care what gender or age or nationality you're coming from. I'm just sick of that story. It's a played out story. So in that sense, that's what she's trying to. So I always try and separate my tastes from if the artist does the thing successfully. That's what she's trying to do, and this book does that very successfully. And it does it so successfully that I overcome my own taste of God, I'm sick of these stories. And I still really enjoyed a lot about this book. I'm just always curious what someone with these type of skills and narrative powers and storytelling abilities could do if they told something other than just another artist struggling. So in summer, she's feeling really good, feeling really strong, and she goes and is producing these arts. If you look at this artist's Instagram, which I'll post a link to, this is a lot of her paintings here, and she goes and gets a gallery show, and then the rest of the story is her struggling to make the art in time for the gallery show and going through all of the depression and things that artists supposedly face. I don't know, I just don't deal with that stuff, so I'm just not interested in it as a story. But there's so much beautiful stuff. So this book is full of, and this is something I've talked about in a number of videos going back to the Guido Creepaw video that we did. I love rhythm in comic pages, and I love when you have subdivisions where rhythms play against each other, and this book is full of that. And you have these circular kind of calendar-like rhythms where obviously these are her color palette, but she's associating it with the idea of the calendar. And she's working on, the book is split into the 6 seasons, but this would obviously be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is an 8, so you could have this other kind of cyclical idea, and then putting that against the more linear progression of time I think is really fascinating. She's constantly breaking panels up into more panels with the stuff in the panel, so the window and then all of her art. Here we have some stuff that I'm assuming is like inspirations for her on her wall. So all kinds of tricks like that that really make a page move and sing rhythmically. Here's some recreations, I'm assuming, of her art. That's what the paintings that I'm assuming were in the gallery show look like, and there's a lot of that on Instagram. But here she's taking them to the gallery, showing them, and then congratulations, we've got the gallery in the spring, and then she starts planning. So this is an artist. There's always the grid behind. There's lots of organizational lists and stuff. I'm very familiar with all this, and I know it's so funny that people know what they like. Like, this is Tori, totally. This is my partner, Tori. She has lists and books with grids and lots of little notes. Like, I recognize her in this so much. So maybe that's part of like the entry I had into this book, is this, I don't know, kind of subgenre of mostly women, I think, on Instagram and these social media sites with all these organizational stuff. I actually really want to have been wanting before I found this book to do a story kind of in those lines. So this and some of the other books we've been looking at are helping me solve some of the problems of how I want to present that story of this very organized, partitioned off lifestyle. Again, creating panels within panels. So here's like one panel that's subdivided into like a 9-panel page type of structure. So I always love that in art. All of the way things subdivide on a computer screen. Again, all of these systems for demarcating time and delineations. I don't know, and this is like the story I'm interested in that I want to tell, is if she finds this comforting or if she finds it to be a trap. She seems in the story to constantly rely on these structures. But I think like a lot of people get claustrophobic about those structures too. I'm not sure. But the keyboard, having the calendar. So I love the idea of the calendar as a panel, within a comic. Like there are sequences of days planned out here, but there's also the gaps of sleep in between. So that's something I've never thought about in relationship to, especially like Scott McCloud's idea of closure in between panels. Like, the closure in between each day when you go to bed is suggested by that. The structure of the lights here. This is someone who's so keenly aware of subdivision, and that's so evident in how she lays stuff out. But it's like she's found everything in life that has partitioned off and subdivided, and worked it into the book as well. So I think that's interesting. And since I've been thinking about that, it's making me, I feel like I'm just going to wind up stealing a lot from this book now if I ever do the story I'm thinking about. So I have to be a little leery of that. But yeah, always lists and stuff. Here's a really beautiful page. So really keen use of symbol throughout the book as well. Like, I know in comics we tend to have the thought balloon as like a standard trope of how to represent someone's interiority. And I love this more iconographic because she's talking about all the stress of the emails and the phone calls. And Tori's phone is like this too. I obsessively, if I see a number next to something, I'm opening it. But Tori has, 1,000 emails, and so the people that let that build up and let it stress them out. I guess I'm so stressed by it, I don't let it build up. But so much iconography in here that I love that use of the balloon as more of like a logo that you would push on an icon that you push on your phone. But then obviously this is all of the pressure she's feeling cramped and crowded. So yeah, I guess at a certain point, all of this structuring makes her feel claustrophobic. But here it's not structured. There's a structure behind it, but it's chaos over it. So I'm guessing that this character, it wasn't super clear to me throughout the read, but I'm guessing that this character would like to organize these all into, and I don't know how strictly autobiographical this is. I'm assuming it's pretty autobiographical, but And I'm also making the assumption that she's going to want to put these all in their proper box and help her deal with it like that. And like here's a flower with that kind of circular repetition falling apart, so I'm assuming that's a stressful thing. Here's another panels within panels trick. I love it because it stretches out time. I can see it all as one unit, but I can also count these because we're in a comic. Each one of these equals some kind of moment, so it stretches out the time. Here we're doing the head in the clouds trick, so again using the word balloon and like putting yourself in your own thoughts. Just such sophisticated use of visual metaphor and symbolism to create emotional meaning. So this is the kind of stuff where at this point I don't care that it's the type of story that I hate the most. Like, I'm invested in the story and I'm getting something out of it. Here's another one playing a game, Snakes and Ladders, but it also again has that calendar feel. So I get the sense of, even though the days are counting down backwards, I get the sense of a calendar there. So really relating the way comics deal with time to life in a more direct way than I'm used to seeing in a lot of comics. Here developing a color palette. And yes, I'm being shown a color palette, but I also this is like a little abstract comic to me because it's in the context of a comic. I'm seeing each one of these as a panel. Normally if I see that, that's just someone's color palette. So I love that bringing these things that would normally not be read as comics into the like a window or whatever, bringing them into the context of a comic, into these structured pages, these very subdivided, rhythmically subdivided pages, recontextualize so many things for me as a comic. This one being the one where I turned the page and I was like, oh my god, like how have I never thought of this before? Our Instagram feeds are comics. They're like these stories that we're telling one picture at a time and we're curating and editing them. So that was like, I've never even thought of that before. I think about everything as comics. Another one that's in here, oh no, I already flipped past it. The one of her in the thought balloon with the stuff scattered made me think of scrapbooking. Like that's always something I've thought of as a form of comics that no one talks about. So I'm pretty prone to think about non-comic activities as comics. Never thought about Instagram feed as, I know there's comics on Instagram, but I never thought about the relationship of everybody's a comic artist these days. Everybody is curating a sequence of images to try and express something about them. And it took her drawing that into a comic for me to see the panel structure of Instagram. So I appreciate that. And there are some really interesting artists using Instagram to tell comic stories. Maybe I'll do a video about one of those that immediately comes to mind. But man, like you're all comic artists now. That's awesome. That's a whole like new realm of what comics is that opened up for me thanks to this book. Here she is. She's putting all her paintings on the wall, so the gallery shows finally happen. And then she goes like winter, she's depressed. So to me, that's all a little bit cliche, but if that's her experience, that's her experience, you know. And then you come back to spring and life blooms and she starts feeling better and her show goes up. So that all seems very like restrictive to me. You know, that you have to be happy in winter, or sad in winter and happy in spring. I don't really deal with vitamin D deficiency, so maybe that's another thing. But those all seem restrictive, but there's I don't know, it's a weird thing in here. Like, is that restriction good or bad? Here's another one that I really like, this color by number, so infographics type of stuff. Really compelling book. The biggest thing that I take away is this conversation about structuring, how much people need structure and how much they want to fight against the structures, the cultural structures, the personal structures, just the tendency to break a day up into time. Like, you know, that seems to be such a deep human need to subdivide and structure things. You know, always kind of creating these systems. And then I find it fascinating, maybe this is why I resonate with this book a little bit more, is artists are constantly fighting against their structures. You know, if anyone's going to rebel against the current structure, it's going to be the art kids first. But then we're like constantly working within them, and I think she shows that very well, like how reliant we still are on those. And I think that's a narrative that's playing out constantly in society. I don't want to say more so today than ever before. But this idea of everyone being categorized and boxed, and you know, like how much we're at the same time we're rebelling against it, we're relying on it, and we need it, but then we're always pushing back. So that shows up very strongly in this book. I take away that this artist really, really needs these structures, because pages like this is when she seems most distressed. This is one that I was saying looks almost like a what I call it, a scrapbook. Yeah, so scrapbooks as comics. I think Linda Barry's probably the only person who's really done that. Something else I'm curious about. But here's another comics on Instagram. So definitely recommend this book. I think multiple reads could, you know, really be illuminating. Thanks for checking in. Make sure to check out our book, The Strange Death of Alex Raymond. You should be able to get it in comic stores, bookstores, or through Amazon soon, if not already. Take it away, Jack.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.